Good Tuesday morning. Luke has got some good examples here. We're going to have a string of them, okay? Actually, 3 in a row that I think are great texts. And they're beautiful texts. They're the texts dealing with the pursuit of Christ. By whom? The outsiders. The first one yesterday was the blind man. Today is the outsider by sin, the tax collector, okay? The tax collector. All righty? Who can't even see Christ, but so desperate he climbs a tree. I'll read it, okay? I remember this. It was the only mission I ever gave was 50 years ago with my classmate, John O'Brien. We gave a mission. It was terrible in Baltimore. We were total amateurs, okay? But the text for that Sunday was this text there. And I said, we're like this guy here. We're trying to get an angle on Jesus. I remember myself getting off that line, getting an angle on Jesus. Oh, for Pete's sake. Anyway, at that time, Jesus came to Jericho and intended to pass through. By the way, whenever you hear the word pass, that's a Passover event. It's a sacred moment. You don't throw that word around. Yesterday, he was passing by. That always signifies a crisis moment, a moment of faith. Anytime Christ passes by, it's Passover. You see? You get it? You've got to get that. It's the moment of decision. Okay? At that time, Jesus came to Jericho and intended to pass through the town. Now, a man there named Zacchaeus, who was a tax collector and also a wealthy man, was seeking to do what? To see Jesus. To see who he was. See, he was a tax collector. This guy's bad. You couldn't be worse than a tax collector. And nobody likes him anyway. But it means he was a betrayer. He was a Jew. He was a betrayer. He worked for the Romans. Are you kidding me? This guy's bad to the bone. Okay? The chief tax, and he's ahead of it. This guy really sold out to the Romans. He's a tax collector and a wealthy man who was seeking to see who Jesus was. But he could not see him because of the crowd. For he was a short in stature, a little guy. See? So he ran ahead and climbed the sycamore tree in order to see Jesus, who was about to do what? To pass by. Pass that way. It's a moment of decision. When he reached the place, Jesus looked up. So Christ takes the initiative, looked up and said, Zacchaeus, come down quickly. For today I must stay at your house. What? This guy just wants to see him, and Christ says, I want to enter your house. You have to understand something. When you enter in somebody's house, you're entering into the intimacy of their heart and family. Nobody comes into somebody else's house. And to eat at the dinner table is to be family. Trust me, that comes from my house too. Say, I must stay at your house. And he came down quickly and received him with joy. When they saw this, they began to grumble. Okay, saying he has gone to stay at the house of a sinner. And the guy was. He's as bad as it gets. But Zacchaeus stood there and he said to the Lord, behold, half of my possessions, Lord, I shall give to the poor. And if I have extorted anything from anyone, I will repay them 4 times over. Jesus said to him, today salvation has come to this house, because this man too is a descendant of Abraham. For the Son of Man has come to seek and to save what was lost. God, I love that text. It's a little pipsqueak, okay? Little guy. He can't even see Christ because of the crowd. Almost because he couldn't see him because of the church. So he had to transcend it to get an angle on it. So he climbs a tree. But up in the tree, he sees Christ, but Christ takes the initiative. He takes the initiative to climb the tree, but Christ takes the initiative and he calls to him. And he doesn't say to him, anything more than say, come on down, I want to stay at your house. Christ takes completely the initiative. Christ invites himself into someone else's home. You don't do that in the ancient world. You don't. You wouldn't do it in my home. My family? Are you kidding me? You only came to dinner if you were invited. Believe me. Believe me, it's a sacred place. So Christ goes to dine with the sinner, the estranged, the real sinner, the public sinner, Zacchaeus, see? And he transforms him. He brings him redemption. Christ takes the initiative, but Zacchaeus had to take a first step in something. He had to climb the tree. He had to exert himself to see Christ. He had to put an effort in, just like the blind man had to yell out. Now Zacchaeus had to climb. So it's not amazing. It's not completely passive at all. Zacchaeus doesn't climb the tree. Christ passes by. The opportunity comes in the passing, and Zacchaeus takes advantage of it. His way, I think the song My Way. He does it his way, climbs a tree. He takes the initiative, at least to see. I just want to see who this is, who he is. What is this guy? See? He doesn't see him as a miracle worker or anything, not like the blind man. See? Just see. It's a great prayer again. Sometimes we have to climb the sycamore. We have to climb a tree to transcend in many ways the church in order to see Christ and then to see the church. See? There's a lot of truth in what I'm saying there. Somehow the crowd gets in the way. The flaws and the faults. Sometimes, let me put it in a blunt way, the clergy get in the way of the faith. Sometimes there's a line in the monastery. God monastery is a place for one great one-liner. God saves the church despite the clergy. Boy, history, if that ain't true, ain't nothing true in so many ways. I think of the great reformers of the church were not the clergy, they were the women. I think of that all the time. They were outsiders, as it were. They weren't part of the clergy. They redeemed us. They called us to task. They kept us honest. In a way, like a maternal way in which a mother tells her sons, get your acting gear, as only she could tell them. Huh? Okay, Ma. Okay. Okay, Ma. Yeah. Yeah. See? Zacchaeus, this is a beautiful man. I like this guy. Climbs up a tree. You see, take the initiative. If you remain passive in your doubts, then you'll never find the truth. I don't care what discipline you're in. Learning, you have to learn with your heart. My father said the difference between a chef and a cook. A cook knows what to do. A chef cooks with his heart and his head. You've got to climb the tree, as it were. That's an analogy. You got to be willing. You have to be willing to see, just like Zacchaeus, desperately. Here climbs a tree, and the blind man begs to see. See? Well, I think that's a good prayer. Lord, let me see. Lord, make me wise. Make me see what is true and good and beautiful in the people you have given me. Once again, it's my Sarah, her grandmother. To love Sarah, you must first see her. What an act of wisdom. See? Which means to see her, you might have to climb a tree. You get it? You have to look with the intent to be open to the beauty of the beloved. But you have to be willing to allow the beauty to come and transform you. I've never said that before. You have to have a heart open to beauty, not on your terms, on her terms, its terms, the church. You have to be open to her beauty. That means you might have to climb a tree. You might have to climb a tree and get an angle on it, because if maybe up front we're too short and it's maybe too ugly up close in that way. Maybe you've got to get above it and see it. Once you see Christ and you see the church, you see, yes, even despite the clergy, she's beautiful. The people of God are beautiful. They are the beauty of Christ in the world. Perfect? Nah. Flawed? Yes. Beautiful? Mostly. Most certainly. See? I think of some of the men I lived with in New York. They weren't innocent. And some of the most beautiful men I lived with were men who struggled with sobriety and all the rest. I was in the presence of the holy very often with men struggling just to be sober. You learn that. You learn Christ comes in many forms. He ain't pretty. He's beautiful. The church definitely is not pretty, but she is beautiful. You might have to climb a tree to see it. But if you have the courage to climb that tree, you will see it. And you will dine in the house. You will dine at the table. That's the truth. You'll be invited. Christ will invite himself into your heart because you have sought to see him.